Good morning, lunatics. I'm Sunday, Taylor Haase, DK behind the camera, and I open all of these because he loves when I say good morning, lunatics.
No one can match that energy.
I'm sorry. It's just a lot of energy. I have the same energy for Get-Go. I have the same energy for the fish stuff that they've got going on, the Lenten fish. I know you're stopping after this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big into seafood. I'm from Baltimore. Yeah.
In case you haven't seen, she actually wears like a Maryland shirt every once in a while. Phil Kessel scored a goal in a hockey game for the first time in 16 games.
And did a 16-game goal drought, and you could see how much it meant to him and his teammates. Because, I mean, they had to review it. Like, it looked like maybe it could come back. I think everyone held their breath. And then the way Hornquist jumped up when it was announced a good goal, I mean, he jumped in the air, threw his arms up, high-fived him.
Well, Hornquist, he left the crease. Now, John Tortorella, after the game, he said that he thought that it probably was interference on Hornquist. Everybody here disagrees. Phil Kessel disagrees. Evgeny Malkin, who had a smile like, and Hornquist. I mean, this whole place, it was like all of the stress that has been building up all season, all of the blame on everybody that you can name, it all left for just a moment, and it came back during the review, and then it left again. It was really kind of cool to experience.
Yeah, and I don't think it was interference. I think there's interference after the fact, which isn't goaltender interference then. But yeah, I mean, I think just the way things have been going for Phil lately, everyone was still nervous about it. Yeah.
We don't think it was interference, but we don't coach the Blue Jackets. So Taylor, bringing more energy. Dominic Simone tried to attack a Columbus Blue Jacket, and then Garrett Wilson bailed him out.
Yeah, it's a good thing Garrett Wilson came onto the ice because that's not the kind of player Simone is. I mean,
he's a coursey guy, as you wrote about, but go ahead.
That is the player Garrett Wilson is. He hasn't dropped the gloves many times in Pittsburgh. That was his 8th NHL fight, counting, preseason. He's a good fighter. That was the most exciting fight. I don't know. I'm surprised they didn't take him in for concussion protocol because he hit his head pretty hard on the ice.
That's what somebody mentioned. I put out a couple of photos. You could see him tackle who was a Foligno to the ice, and I looked back through it, and you can actually see his head going to the ice. That fight lasted a good while. That was one of those where the linesmen were kind of afraid to get in at first, but they stayed at full arm's length, and that's normally when you see them get in and try to break that up, feeling a little safety. But, they let them go. Yeah,
and I mean, I guess I'm not surprised that they let them go because the way this game had been going, you knew a fight was going to happen. It was probably good to let them get it out of their system. Wilson had tried dropping the gloves earlier in the game. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of minutes, but the minutes he did played, he had a pretty good game. He had the 2 hits. He had that first block shot on his left instep. I didn't think he was going to come back, and he was only in the room for a couple minutes, and he came right back out. He was fine.
Yeah, he got right back out. You actually texted me early in the game and said, "Let Wilson throw the fist.
Yeah.
Let him fight." It just felt like one of those games. And it wasn't one where it felt like Eric Branson was going to go because who wants to go against that guy? But I'll tell you what. The Blue Jackets, they weren't afraid to chirp with guys like Phil Kessel.
No.
He's out there just smiling away, chirping back and forth. But, that fourth line, as you mentioned, they took the ice a couple of times, and Teddy Bluger included. There were a couple sequences where all 3 guys on that fourth line threw big bodies into the Blue Jackets, and I expect that's going to continue into Saturday.
Yeah, listening to, I guess, Pittsburgh fans who haven't followed Wilson before he came here, they don't necessarily see him as a very intimidating presence. I think anyone who heard of him or seen him play in Wilkes-Barre know what he's capable of, and I think maybe if he can start growing that part of his game, and he could be more feared.
He's a physically fit dude, of course, but he's also heavy, and my knees have felt it a couple of times when he hits guys along the boards. I mean, I know people think I'm joking about that, but I can legitimately feel pain in my knees when these guys hit the boards sometimes, and I'm a little too close to the action. Dan, I want to talk about these 2 guys. Well, it really boils down to one today, but I'm just going to pass a name out there. I'm going to let you talk, and I'm just going to sit here and nod my head around a little bit.
Who might that be,
Just
Sunday?
like up in Buffalo a couple of years ago when you wrote about a certain guy named Foligno taking a dive. There's another guy named Foligno in this game.
Let me tell you something about Nick Foligno, Sunday. Let me tell you that the Columbus Blue Jackets have a lot of problems, and people trace those problems to John Tortorella, and they trace them to a lesser extent to Sergei Bobrovsky. Let me tell you something. The captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets goes out there against that particular opponent game after game after game and folds like a cheap tent. That's what he does. He collapses on the ice. He's trying to draw diving He's diving to try to draw penalties. He's causing trouble. He's taking stupid minors, of which he took 2 in this game. He never, ever scores in these games. And I'm going to remind you here, he's the one wearing the C. So when you bring in all this other talent, which they did, Matt Duchene and everybody else, and Columbus won the deadline, yay. What did they get for that? Nothing, because they still got to play under that guy Sunday. They still got to play under that guy and under that coach and in front of, well, where's the goalie? They didn't even let him on the rink. A Vezina Trophy winning goaltender wasn't allowed to even sit on the bench for a game they needed to make the playoffs. That's how far away they wanted. Do talk about this. This team's unbelievable.
I was just ready to talk about Keith Kincaid and being Marty Brodeur against the Penguins, but hey, we could just talk about.
But they didn't even use Keith Kincaid because they couldn't even bring themselves to admit that that's why they got Keith Kincaid, because the only team in the NHL Keith Kincaid can beat is this one, and he sat with you and watched the game.
Good morning, lunatics. I'm awake now.